Ladies and gents, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about the open beta for Ghost Recon Wildlands that was available from the 23rd of last week to the 27th of this week. And now that it's over, I am finally going to talk about it. Now, I was only able to really invest one day into playing the beta, which was the first day, on Thursday, which allowed me to cover the entire first province worth of content, and then got about halfway through the second province, which was available. So it's more than enough time to actually kind of get an idea of what the game is like, how it plays, and build up a general consensus of how I feel about it. And ultimately, it feels awful. Like, I'm greatly disappointed in what I played so far. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But the main thing about this game is how underwhelming and boring and dull it is in the grand scheme of things. I'm going to nitpick every little thing I can think of, mechanics-wise, feature-wise, all that kind of stuff as I go on forward. But first, I kind of want to cover a few things I think they did really well. Ubisoft did a fantastic job with the character creator screen. When I first saw it and I first started making my character at the very beginning, I was already intrigued. The fact that they have a ton of options in terms of equipment that you can wear. Now, most of the items you can actually equip are unlocked, but some of them appear to be locked, whether or not you have to actually unlock them through gameplay, or whether or not it was just because it was the open beta and they don't want you to have access to everything. I'm not entirely certain. All I know is that it was well done, well made, and ultimately I'm happy with how they did things. The only thing that kind of bothered me a bit though was that you have to unlock equipment for your, like, attachments for your weapons. You actually have to unlock them by finding them in the game world, which is something I was kind of a little off-put by. It's like, look, this is a Ghost Recon game. Ghost Recon, you know, these guys should have all the kit they need when they're going in. And it doesn't really make much sense how you can unlock or have all this gear, clothing, and equipment available to you, but your weapons don't have attachments. Like, you get a stock MK18 or MK14 or whatever weapon you start off with, and you don't have attachments like a optic or anything like that, which you have to find in the world. I only found it towards the end of my actual playtime. Like, I went the whole game just using iron sights, having an ACOG on my M40 sniper rifle, and that was it. And then I finally found a red dot later on, and I was like, oh, this is neat, okay, cool. But I mean, it would have made a lot more sense to actually have all these stuff available to you right away. But of course they want to, you know, enforce the whole exploring their massive open world to unlock things, you know, philosophy, which is just a huge flaw in my mind. And in my mind, when you're having a Ghost Recon game, a squad-based tactical shooter that's supposed to be about realism, even though we know Ghost Recon Wildlands is the furthest thing from it, it makes sense to actually give you all the equipment you require from the get-go, and that way you can actually tailor your playstyle exactly how you want it. Regardless though, the character customization is very well done. But what probably takes the cake, the #1 spot for what this game does right, which is absolutely amazing and trumps every other game I have seen out there by far, is the options menu for your graphical settings. They did a phenomenal job illustrating what each and every single preset you can choose from low to ultra looks like. They don't just mention it, or, you know, they don't just tell you what it does, or, you know, this is the graphical setting and show all the settings changing. It actually has an image that adjusts in real time, showing you what it looks like. Now, they're pre-rendered images, so you can't, like, go into a custom setting and change things how you want, and then it'll show the image of what it looks like. It's just a pre-rendered image. But you can actually go through every single option as well, like subsurface scattering, anisotropic filtering, you know, depth of field, motion blur, all that stuff, and you can switch them on and off, and it'll have an image. Not only will it give you a tooltip description of what each and every single setting does, it'll actually show you the image as well, and it'll actually have a comparison when you're flipping back and forth between them, which is fantastic. Plus, it's a benchmarking tool to go with it, so you can really try to squeeze the performance out of the game if you try. Now, of course, performance is a little bit finicky right now. People have been complaining about optimization issues. Now, for me, it's been running around 60 frames per second. I'm playing in 1440p. It sometimes will dip into the low 50s, but other than that, it's not too bad, and that's on the very high preset. And I actually kind of increased the anisotropic filtering to 16 times, because for some reason, very high has it only at 8. I don't know why, because anisotropic filtering pretty much has, like, no performance impact. You might as well just max it out. But anyway, regardless of that fact, performance is a little finicky on a lot of people's systems. Now, I have a 1070, GTX 1070. That's my performance. That's what it is. You can even see it. Just, you know, I don't have a performance, like, FPS counter in the gameplay, but when I was playing it, it was hovering around 60 to 50 to 70 depending on the environment where I was. So yeah, optimization can definitely be a little bit better, but it really depends on your system as well. So I mean, obviously that's one of the big things about PC gaming, is that the performance differs greatly on a variety of different hardware. But for me, it was okay. I mean, there was definitely more to be desired. I feel like my system could absolutely do better, but unfortunately that was just the case right now. Moving on, let's talk about the other elements that I like, which is the HUD. I'm not talking about the HUD as in like the HUD, it's the whole thing itself, but I'm talking mainly about the little features that they have going on at the bottom left of your screen, where if you're actually aiming with your weapon, it'll kind of act as a modifier, where if you're aiming down your optic, or you're just aiming over the shoulder, or whatever the case may be, Alt would allow you to toggle between actually doing that, aiming over your shoulder, or aiming through your sights, or optic, or whatever. And, you know, the Z key by default will change your fire selector switch, so it'll either be fully automatic or semi-automatic. You know, the B key by default zooms in a little bit, zooms out for your optic. There's little things like that, and if you're not aiming down your sights, those exact same keys have a completely different use. So again, it's like a modifier, but it kind of does feel like it's a console type of feature, right? You would expect this from a console game, not so much a PC game where you actually have a dozen keys, like a crap load of options, you have how you want to bind things. The game kind of has this whole modifier contextual screen setup, which isn't terrible, it's interesting, and it kind of does work in a PC environment, but ultimately, as a PC gamer, I'm sure many people would like to just be able to have everything set to a specific keybind, so that way you can't confuse things with modifiers or any of that stuff. Again, not a huge problem, but it's definitely something I do like about the game, but if it was possible to do without, I mean, as PC gamers, we like our options, right? And if it's possible to have those options, that'd be better. So let's talk about the last thing on the list for what I approve of, what I think they did a good job with. Next up would be just the size of the map. Now, when you're running around the two provinces you have available to you, it is kind of massive. It is kind of a big environment, and you look at the whole grand scheme, the entire map, and you realize, like, yeah, this is huge. This almost feels like an Arma-esque type of environment where it's just one big, giant map. And it's all going to have different geological types of terrain. So, like, you know, you'll have, like, winter areas, desert areas, forest areas, jungle, whatever, all within the same kind of country, but it's all different provinces have different weather and different geological makeups. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting on how they're going to do that. That way, it's like you can actually alter your camouflage and actually change your gear relative to the environment you're operating in. The only thing I find that kind of annoys me, though, is how they don't do anything with it. I mean, you have these, like, the ghillie suits and, like, the camouflage you select doesn't actually give you any inherent advantage. So it kind of seems like it's the whole point is moot. You might as well just run around with pink covered clothing because it doesn't make a difference, right? It would be kind of interesting if they implemented the same system that Metal Gear Solid's been operating on for the last few years, where basically if you're wearing a certain type of camouflage in a certain environment, it gives you more of a percentage of not being seen. Kind of enhances your stealth a little bit more, your concealment, which would have been interesting to see. I mean, I think most games should do that. That should be like a standard nowadays, where the AI has more trouble seeing you based on the camouflage you're wearing in any given environment that you're operating in. That would be a really cool feature for any game. I think that should be something that should be a staple in tactical shooters from now on moving forward, because, let's be honest, that's just, the whole concealment thing is a very important aspect of actual warfare, especially for operators hiding in the shadows, hiding in thick brush, hiding in the grass, whatever it is. They need to be able to conceal themselves, and if you can't conceal yourself properly, then, you know, they could spot you out, like they see a toe sticking out from a bush and they spot you. Well, you know, it doesn't really make sense. So something like that would be a nice kind of mechanic to implement into a game like this, especially how it plays a lot like Metal Gear Solid, but just in a more horrible way. But anyway, the map is huge. It's nice, but the main drawback I have is just how empty and desolate and boring and dull it feels. That's just what it is. The environment is huge. It's beautiful. It looks great. I mean, it's not E3 great, but it's still great. But it just lacks that substance that this area is full of life. It kind of feels just desolate. That's the best way I can describe it. What's the point of having a massive, massive open world if it makes no difference? Like, if it's going to just be completely empty. You know, it seems like wasted space, essentially. But again, in real life, I imagine it would be kind of wasted and empty or whatever. But I mean, they could have gone the Witcher 3 route, you know, where there could be more advanced weather effects that can actually make the world feel like it is a living, breathing world, like the world is, you know, have intense gusts of winds blowing trees around, and which you can use the sound of that for concealment as you move. You know, stuff like that. There's a lot of other interesting things they can do to liven up the environment versus just leaving it where it can rain, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, the environment feels pretty static, and I'm not talking about AI placements or where they are, I'm just talking about the environment, how it feels itself. In a desert, desolate area, yeah, of course it would feel barren and boring, but I imagine if you're moving through like mountainous regions, wind and stuff like that would be a lot more prevalent, and would actually mix things up a bit. You know, if it's gusts of snow blowing past you, or gusts of sand, or whatever, just some kind of environmental effect to make it feel like you're actually moving in a real world, which would definitely help with immersion, which is especially what this game is trying to go for. Now that pretty much wraps up all the good aspects, or what little good there is about this game, and now I'm going to talk about all the negatives of why that heavily outweigh the good, and pretty much make the game unbearable to play in a lot of ways. And this, it's just a very disconcerting thing, because although there are some really good elements about the game, the actual gameplay itself and everything about it is just so awful that it completely negates all the good work that was done. So let's get into that now. I played the entire game on the highest difficulty, so on extreme. Now you would expect this to kind of alter many aspects of the game. Like maybe it would limit HUD elements, maybe it would turn off the fact that the enemy can spot you with a spotting indicator, stuff like that. It doesn't change anything. The only thing it actually really changes is the fact that you die quicker now. It takes far less bullets to actually kill you, whether you get hit in the leg, whether you get hit in the head or shoulders or like the arms or whatever. No matter where you get hit in the body, you'll drop a lot quicker, and it just makes the enemy AI have superhuman abilities, where they can snipe you out with a submachine gun and fully automatic from very far away. And they run around and they can shoot on the move with incredible accuracy, and just again, superhuman qualities that just aren't possible. I mean, you as an operator in the game can't even achieve what they achieve, which is incredibly frustrating for the player. It's like, why even have a higher difficulty that doesn't actually inspire realistic play just because the AI can behave unrealistically? So, I mean, trying to play all slow and tactically and methodically, you can't really achieve it in the same way that you can in actual realistic games, because it doesn't facilitate that. The AI has unrealistic behaviors, the gameplay itself is incredibly arcadey, which I'll get to in a little bit. But again, difficulty, not really a big game changer. Some people suggest turning off the HUD elements. I didn't do it because I wanted to play the game as it was developed, and of course, or as it was designed. And of course, the HUD elements don't actually change with difficulty. So if you're going online with friends, you're handicapping yourself basically. If you're going online with randoms, you're handicapping yourself. If you're playing solo, okay, cool. But again, you're just handicapping yourself in a way that doesn't really actually improve gameplay. It doesn't really make the game feel more realistic or tactical and methodical in any way, just because, like I said, the whole aspect of the game, the mechanics of moving around and shooting and fighting and just the AI, all of it together combines into a very unrealistic arcade gamey type of feel that just feels reminiscent of every other run and gun third-person shooter. So there's no sense of real tactical gameplay there, so turning off your HUD doesn't really achieve that. It may look nicer, maybe a little bit more immersive, but ultimately in the end, the game just doesn't facilitate that realistic tactical play, which is the biggest problem I have with this game, because it is a Ghost Recon title. If you're making a Ghost Recon game that is so far out there, you might as well call it Saints Row, because it's going in the same direction, where you look at Saints Row 1, it was kind of built in an atmospheric, realistic, authentic world, and then as each iteration of game came out, it just got more and more nonsensical. And that's kind of what Ghost Recon Wildlands feels like. It's like a cross of GTA, Mercenaries, a variety of other open world, arcade, running gun shooters. It doesn't really feel like you're playing a tactical Ghost Recon game. The movement is probably one of the biggest contributors to this. Now, if you're playing with the controller, it's a little bit better because you have an analog stick and you can do incremental movement speeds and adjustments. You can fine-tune how you move around, but it's still just awful. It feels janky, it feels loose, it feels very unresponsive at times. Like, my character will do things I don't want him to do. There's no sense of weight to your character. He's just instantly able to achieve things, going from like a completely stationary position to full-on sprint in like 1 meter, not even, just instant. It just creates this disconnect from reality, where if you compare it to like Ghost Recon 2 or Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, I'm talking about the console versions here, even Future Soldier managed to have a little bit of weight and movement and momentum to your characters that is completely absent in Wildlands, giving it that incredibly arcade run and gun, fast-paced type of experience which is not what Ghost Recon's about. Ghost Recon is about simulating as close as you can, even if it does go the arcade route, real life. And adding that weight to your character is a really good way of doing that, and they've done that since the beginning. It's been there since Ghost Recon 2, and even Ghost Recon 1 had some early iterations of it. So I mean, it's really kind of sad to see it go this route, because if they would have just added a little bit more weight to your character, made the animations a little bit more fluid, it could have been a far more intuitive way to play the game, instead of it being how I feel like I'm fighting my character all the time. I'm making him trying to do things and he's not really... It's not as bad as I'm making it sound, but it's still not pleasant to play. Like, moving into a building and clearing out a building feels awkward. You're crouch walking everywhere because you need to stay stealthy or quiet, or you want to move slower. If you're aiming down your sights, or if you're, over the shoulder view, it just kind of zooms in into an FOV that's just not really... It's kind of claustrophobic for moving around the environment when you're trying to go CQB inside buildings and clear it out. It doesn't feel right. And it's just one thing I noticed right off the bat that really turned me off. Is just I didn't feel like I was playing. If it was only outdoors, like, if it was only expansive open environments, then it wouldn't be so bad. But moving around in urban environments, it just doesn't feel right. And the fact that Ghost Recon 2 and Advanced Warfighter and even Future Soldier did it better is just sad. Like, it's just, that's really just it. It's sad. And it would have been nice if they could have just kept the same feel of that. If they would have took Advanced Warfighter's gameplay mechanics and put it in this game, it would have been so much better in my mind already. But no, it feels a lot more arcadey. So let's actually talk specifically about AI now. Your friendly AI are incredibly stupid. Like, just that simple. They are beyond stupid. They will navigate the environment in a very ridiculous fashion. Like, they won't follow your lead. They'll lag behind. They'll kind of run ahead of you. And enemy AI don't see them. There are many times where I'd see my friendly AI out in the open while an enemy AI just kind of walks right past them, and they don't even acknowledge each other. They don't see them. It's happened numerous times, and I don't really know why that is. I'm thinking maybe it's because Ubisoft thought it would be a good idea to make it so that the AI is invisible, so that because the fact that they're doing that, it won't ruin the experience for you. Because imagine if your AI just ran up forward and all of a sudden they get contacted and spotted and it ruins your cover, blows the whole operation, and then you're forced to go into a confrontation. I imagine that's why they would do something like that. But at the same time, it's like, improve the AI. Why even have your AI run around doing ridiculous things? Pathfinding poorly, which is what's happening. They don't pathfind very well. They don't know exactly where they're going half the time. If you're in a compound, for example, which has happened to me multiple times, if I'm inside a compound that's walled in and my AI teammates haven't actually come inside the compound with me, if I go down, I'm stuck waiting there for them to try to figure out how to get to me. And it'll take forever. It'll take upwards of 2 minutes sometimes for them to try to find where I'm at, or try to get to me to revive me. And sometimes, if they can't do so efficiently, they'll just teleport to a convenient spot to come and get me. Which is... what? Like, why is this even a thing? Especially when you're in vehicles and, your teammates will just teleport into the vehicles. Or if you take a dirt bike, you start driving off into the middle of nowhere, and you get out, suddenly all your teammates just poof! Like magic, they're all around you, ready to go on mission. It's very immersion breaking, very unrealistic, and just nonsense. Like, why is this? Why is it functioning this way? I get the game is focusing on co-op, but the fact that you have single player AI this ridiculous, like represented in this way, it's so blatantly obvious and just awful for gameplay, and it turns me off as a player. I'm seeing this and it's like an insult. I can tell. I know when friendly AI can just appear. If I'm playing a game like this, I want to be immersed and engrossed in the world and, completing missions, but instead I'm seeing my teammates popping up out of nowhere or making contact with the enemy, practically hugging each other, and they're not even acknowledging each other until I get spotted. Once I'm spotted, then they'll start shooting at each other, which is very, very annoying. And of course, going off with the whole enemy AI thing, it's the same deal. They're not intelligent. They move around. They're positioned way too erratically. They have superhuman abilities on higher difficulties. They can fire on the move and, full auto spraying and hitting you with every single bullet. Their rounds seem to travel faster than yours for some reason. It's almost like they have hit scan and you're using real ballistics. That's the only way I can describe it. You'll be in a firefight and there's like that disconnect where you're firing projectile bullets and they're just spraying at you with like this weird type of tracer hit scan type of thing. And it's, again, off-putting when it comes to actual firefights. It just feels wrong. The whole thing just feels just completely disconnected from what a firefight should actually feel like. Which brings me to the next thing, which is actually bullet ballistics. Let's talk about the ballistics and behaviors of the weapons in this game. If you're using a regular rifle, you got an MK18, M4, whatever, even maybe a submachine gun, maybe even a light machine gun, the rounds seem to travel at a very distinct speed. Every single bullet travels at the same speed, very consistent across those wide range of weapons. Now, if you're using a sniper rifle like the M40, for some reason, the bullet travels remarkably slow. Now, if you want to compare a 5.56 from an MK18 to a 7.62 by 5.1 NATO round from an M40, there's a difference there. The M40 has a higher muzzle velocity than the MK18. The bullet travels much quicker, at over 2,500 feet per second, up to 2,700 feet per second and more, depending on, you know, how whatever grain the round is, however much energy they put into that thing. But the point is, it's a much faster bullet, yet I'm sniping with an M40 and I have to lead targets at 100 meters. And you can actually see the bullet traveling at 100 meters. And if you're engaging a target like 500 meters away, the bullet takes an eternity to reach them. You can see the bullet just arcing through the air. It's like the worst case of sniper penalization of trying to compensate for, you know, distance and watching for bullet drop I've ever seen. Because the bullet just travels so slow. Which, again, is a complete disconnect from everything else. When you're sniping, you're expecting that round to be fucking quick. You're putting a round down range, it's going to travel really quick and rip that target apart. When you're sniping in this game, you might as well just equip, like, a higher magnification optic to your assault rifle, like your M4 or whatever, and just snipe them in the head, because it's a lot quicker. You don't have to compensate that much, because the round travels faster. It's strange. I don't know why that is. I don't know what they thought, what they were thinking, what made them think that was a good idea, but ultimately it's just poor game design. Like, why make the sniper rifles have lower muzzle velocities than every other weapon in the game? When in real life, most of them have insanely high muzzle velocities compared to every other weapon. It's just, I don't know. The whole thing turns me off. It's incredibly annoying. But what's even worse, probably the worst aspect of this game, hands down, is the driving physics. Driving around in the vehicle, getting over terrain, it's the most ludicrous, asinine implementation of driving physics I have ever seen in all my years of gaming. People like to say that the Mako in Mass Effect 1 handled very, very poorly and was a pain and a chore to drive. That thing is like an F1 car compared to all the vehicles in this game. Because every single vehicle in this game has the most wonky physics I've ever seen. Like, they don't behave like cars behave. They completely break reality in a way that is so deterrent to you actually wanting to use vehicles. It just completely, like, try taking a dirt bike off-road and you're just bouncing up in the air, like, ridiculously, trying to get from point A to point B. The whole thing just feels awful. How is this acceptable in a AAA game? It is beyond me. And whoever the hell at Ubisoft thought this was a good idea clearly needs to get their head examined or fired and never allowed to work again in the gaming industry, period, because that is the worst vehicle handling physics I have ever seen. And the aircraft is just as bad. Flying around in helicopters is just as awful. The whole thing feels so bad. They could have easily copied any other game with flying physics. Just who cares if it's not original? Copy what works. You don't need to change something into something that's actually broken. Just adopt what is already considered good and implement it into your game. How hard is that? You know, like, you don't have to be original in all aspects, because, quite frankly, your originality in vehicle handling is utter trash. The whole thing sucks. Which leads me to my final point, which is the actual mission design themselves. This is another case of a massive world, huge open ocean. You know, it's as wide as the ocean, but it's as shallow as a puddle, because everything about this game, content-wise, is incredibly repetitive from what I've played so far. Everything. Same exact mission design every single time. Just a different environment, a different outpost, a different town, a different hill, different fob, different compound, but all the same. All the same. It all plays exactly the same. You go in, you interrogate a guy, cool, little side mission here and there, destroy the convoy, tag this, tag that, you know, tag equipment, you know, whether it's a barrel or actual, like, weapons or medical supplies or whatever, or a vehicle that you got in a convoy. Or, you know, it's all very much the same old, over and over and over again. If you're expecting me to do that like 100,000 times, or however many missions you have in the game to last for like 30, 40 hours in this massive open world you so apparently created, then I have absolutely no interest in playing your game, because I experienced it all. The open beta pretty much allowed me to experience the entire game right then and there, just in that specific environment. If it's going to be the same thing over and over again in all the environments, that's just boring. I don't want to keep playing the same thing over and over and over and over again. It's a huge turnoff. And ultimately, those problems culminate together into this just overwhelmingly deplorable, underwhelming experience. That's the best way I can describe Ghost Recon Wildlands. It is incredibly underwhelming. It does nothing to stand out from any other game, and everything it actually does, it does poorly. It does poorly. I've seen indie games do a lot of the feature sets that they have in this game better. It's just sad. It really is. I mean, I already had low expectations for this going into it. I mean, I'll be honest, from what I've already seen, I was like, this isn't going to be a Ghost Recon game, but I was at least expecting it to maybe be fun. I was still considering it on the fact that, hey, you know, this could actually still be a fun game. It won't be a true Ghost Recon game. You know, it won't be realistic in any sense of the word, but it could still be a fun game. And it doesn't even manage to do that. It doesn't even manage to be fun. It saps all the energy out of you. You're playing it and you're just like, this is just so boring. I'm just going through the motions. I don't really care about what's happening. I don't feel invested in this. This whole thing just feels so, you know, just boring, plain, just, That's the best way I can describe it. And for those of you who have played it, you probably have an idea of what I'm talking about. But of course, there are those people out there who actually do like this game and want to pre-order it and want to buy it. And all I can say to you, to those individuals, is you're out of your fucking mind. Because there is no way this game is actually good. It doesn't matter if there are some aspects you enjoy, because there were certainly times I was playing this game where I was having fun. Mostly when things were bugging out and glitching and having problems, that was fun, because it was hilarious to play in co-op with your friends and see how stupid everything was. That's it, just because everything was stupid, not because the game itself actually worked as intended and played as intended. It was because it was doing the exact opposite, is where I found entertainment. And that's the problem. You're basically finding entertainment in a game that's broken. And that is unacceptable. You cannot accept that. You cannot be like, I'm going to reward this behavior with money. It's like your dog, like, freaking bites your ball sack every night when you're sleeping, and you keep giving him treats over and over and over again when he's doing it. Like, rewarding the behavior, so then the next night he bites your dick off, and you're like, what the fuck? That hurt so much, I told you, and you're wondering why. Why did that happen? Where's my penis now? Well, it's your own fucking fault. You keep enforcing it, you keep motivating, you keep encouraging this behavior. This game is broken. Fundamentally, objectively, it's broken and horribly designed and horribly made. But there are still some people out there that think this is fun and are willing to buy it as a result. And unfortunately, because of people like them, games like this are still going to be happening over and over and over again. Broken games. I mean, it's not even the fact that it's a Ghost Recon game and it's nothing like Ghost Recon, and it has Tom Clancy in the name, and it's nothing like a Tom Clancy game. It's not realistic. There's nothing about it that even resembles what Ghost Recon and Tom Clancy was about.
Oh my god.
It's not even about that. It's the fact that the game itself is actually horribly designed and broken beyond belief. That's the problem. Anyway, my name's been PepperBelly. Thank you guys for joining me today. I will see you guys on the next one.